Okay, it is 6 o'clock. Welcome to the June 14th governing body meeting. I call this meeting to order. We will give your attention to Councilman Brett Kell, who will provide the invocation. Stand as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Tonight's invocation will be delivered by Reverend Raymond Toyne. He is a third-generation citizen of Topeka, living with his whole life in the community of Oakland, where he resides with his wife Liz and sons Owen and Ryan. He serves as the associate and worship pastor of Oakland Church of the Nazarene, his home church of 28 years. He is a graduate of Highland Park High School in Topeka. He received his undergraduate degree in Christian ministry from Mid-America Christian University in Oklahoma City, and his master's in divinity from Nazarene Theological Seminary in Kansas City. Raymond works full-time for the National Guard as an emergency management specialist and has served as a member of the Kansas Army National Guard for just under 20 years. He is recently commissioned as a chaplain and placed with the 1st of the 161st Field Artillery Battalion in Hutchinson, Kansas.
Governing body, thank you for having me here tonight. It's such an honor. I invite you to join with me, if you'd like, as I pray in my tradition. God, we come today to offer you thanks and praise. We give you thanks for this wonderful city. We give you thanks for the hearts and hands of its wonderful citizens, and we are thankful for the leaders and workers of our city who have followed the call to serve their community and to care for their neighbor. God, today we ask that you watch over this meeting. Let your hand be on the elected officials of this city as they meet today to do the work of the people. Bless them with wisdom, discernment, courage, compassion, and humility as they come together to make the difficult decisions leaders are called to make, as they continually strive to improve this city so many call home. And God, let the citizens of Topeka be heard tonight as well. Let their hearts be shared with their leaders so that all voices can have a seat at the table and all can share their thoughts and concerns equally. But also, God, please cover the citizens with grace and understanding. Remind us that the work of those elected to serve is a difficult task and not one committed to lightly. God, help our city to find joy, seek peace, and to love and care for our neighbors endlessly and selflessly as you have called us to love. It is in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, through whom all things are made new, that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for your service, sir. Okay, we'll move on the agenda. If the clerk would call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
Valdivia Acala.
Here.
Ortiz.
Here.
Emerson. Kell.
Here.
Nager.
If you said Nager, I'm here, I just didn't hear it.
Yes, sir. Dobler.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
And Lesser. We have 8 present.
Okay, thank you. Second on the agenda is a proclamation. I see a number of people in the audience. This is a proclamation for the Juneteenth recognition and celebration. For those who would like to join me up here as I read the proclamation, you're welcome to join. Okay, a proclamation by the mayor. Whereas Juneteenth represents the first day of celebrating freedom in the United States for all Americans and the last known celebration for the ending of enslavement. And whereas the Emancipation Proclamation was enacted and took effect on January 1, 1863, and on November 19, 1863, during President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, he announced a new nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. And whereas on June 19, 1865, the United States of America, with its former slaves, celebrated a new freedom, coining it Juneteenth. And whereas for 99 years, African Americans made significant sacrifices and contributions toward their freedom while serving in American wars and conflicts, exemplifying courage and patriotism in the face of severe injustice and inequality. And whereas the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were enacted, although not applied with fairness to all Americans, Juneteenth celebrations continue. And whereas for 99 years after the birth of Juneteenth, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and thereafter the Voting Rights Act of 1965, to guarantee all Americans inalienable rights. And throughout time and many perilous trials, Juneteenth events emerged throughout the United States, inspiring Americans to honor their freedom through storytelling, educational venues, and community celebrations. And whereas in 1997, under the leadership of Reverend Ronald B. Myers, Sr., MD, founder, president, and CEO of the National Juneteenth Observance Foundation, and Lula Briggs Galloway, president of the National Association of Juneteenth Lineage, Congress officially passed legislation recognizing Juneteenth as Juneteenth Independence Day. Now therefore, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do hereby claim June 19, 2022 as Juneteenth National Freedom Day in the City of Topeka, Kansas. I strongly encourage all Topeka citizens to participate in the Topeka Family Friends Juneteenth Celebration Incorporated, events which will commemorate the oldest known celebration ending slavery in the United States. In witness whereof, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do hereby affix my official signature and official seal of the City of Topeka, Kansas, on this 14th day of June, 2022. If I see Miss Avery, I saw that you entered the room. If you'd like to come up, if you're able. And I think you have Miss Juneteenth, yes. I was looking for you, Miss Avery. Be careful on that section.
Yeah, he was rushing.
That's all right.
Thank you.
And you, I saw on the red couch, making quite an impression.
Yes, he did.
I think it's appropriate that I give this proclamation to you and give you the opportunity to make any comments either of you would like to make.
We would like to thank the city. We would like to thank the city, the Topeka family and friends. We have tried very hard to get our community to come together and just celebrate freedom. That's what Juneteenth is, freedom. So we just are humbled that we see us coming together and trying to get our own selves together. We shouldn't, like I always say, we shouldn't have to wait till a tragedy happens for us to come together. We should naturally come together and thank that God that we're still here. Because a lot of things have happened these last 2 years. So let's celebrate and enjoy all the freedom that we do have, and in the future also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
I'll see you Saturday.
Yes, you will.
Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, item number 3, appointments, if the clerk would read.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Nicholas Saunders to the Topeka Sustainability Advisory Board for term ending June 30, 2024. And B is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Kenneth Scott to the Downtown Business Improvement District Advisory Board to fill a term ending June 30, 2024.
Okay, you've heard the appointments. Is there a motion from the council?
Motion approved.
Motion to approve by Councilman Dogler, seconded by Councilman Kell. If you'll call the roll vote, please.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
We have 7 yes, motion carries.
Okay, good. Motion carried. And I saw Michaela in here. If you'll stand, please. And Ken, is he in here? I didn't see him. Okay. Well, thank you very much for serving and appreciate your service. Okay, we'll move on to item number 4 on the agenda, presentations. Madam Clerk.
The first presentation is the City of Topeka 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report.
City Manager.
At this time, Mayor and everybody, I'll turn it over to Mr. Steve Wade, Finance Director for the City of Topeka.
Thank you, City Manager. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to bring forward our Deputy Director, Rochelle Matthews, along with our audit firm, RSM, to present the 2021 audit. While they're making their way up, I want to brag on Rochelle a little bit and her team, and I'll let her take it from there. But this is a 5-month process that goes into this. It's a lot of work, and so we're greatly appreciative of what you do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and governing body. Tonight, we have for you the 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, also commonly known as the ACFR. This document represents the final audited financial results for the 2021 fiscal year. In the audience tonight, we have Kristen Hughes, who will present to you the specific findings and results of that audit. I would like to take a moment, if I could, to recognize my staff here tonight and acknowledge their diligent work over the last 5 months. In attendance, we have Amanda Meyer, Kristen Reddy, Dee Chin, Josh McInerney, all from Finance, and Katrina Rice from the Housing and Neighborhood Development. Thank you guys so much for all your hard work. With that, I will turn the presentation over to Kristen Hughes, and I'll gladly stand for any questions at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to echo also as well what they said, the audit, we're going to go through the results and the deliverables, but I would echo that the audit is a lot of hard work for the departments involved. Obviously, and primarily we work with the finance department, but several departments throughout the city as we're going through our testing, and it's a lot of work on their end to get ready for us to, I like to think we ask a lot of hard questions as we're going through the process, and in all seriousness, I mean, they're very responsive as we go through that work process and helping to make what we're doing a priority and keep us on our timeline, et cetera. So before I jump into the PowerPoint, just a reminder of the documents that you have been provided with. This PowerPoint is intended to be a summary of those, but as Rochelle mentioned, the large document is that annual comprehensive financial report. Large report, which you would expect for municipalities of your size. So at a high level, just a reminder of some of the content that is included in there. So the city, for every fund that you budget for and account for, individual financial statements are available in there. Balance sheet and income statement for each fund, and then in the financials, you'll see that combined effort to see the total city's financial results. There is an extensive amount of footnotes in there. You can find detailed information that is required, just things on investments, debt, capital assets, pension plans, et cetera. So I know it's a really large document to go through, and that's why we don't really have the opportunity to dig into it in a meeting like this, but I just want to make sure you're aware of the information that's in there. At the back is the statistical section. So while that's unaudited, that covers a lot of topics. It's beneficial in a lot of ways because most of those schedules provide a 10-year history. You're required to present 10 years worth of information. So a lot of people find that, especially in your role as far as seeing how things like revenue trends are moving. There's demographic information about the city, operating results, et cetera. So The other document is that compliance report. So as a reminder, any entity that expends more than $750,000 in grant funding is required to have your auditor perform what's called a compliance audit. So that is us taking a look at how you're expending federal grant funds and making sure you're in compliance with the requirements of those grant agreements. And then lastly, the other packet is what we call the communications to those charged with governance auditing standards, which is why I'm here this evening. Auditing standards do require us to report back to those charged with governance on the results of the audit and how those went. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in here a bit to the slides we have. And I'm sorry, do I just hit space? Thank you. All right. So first of all here, this is just a summary. As I mentioned, the city has an extensive amount of funds. You've got your governmental and enterprise. So at a high level here, hopefully you can see what total governmental funds revenue did in 2021 compared to 2020. You'll see overall revenue was pretty consistent year over year, went up about 1%. Within the specific categories, and I'm sure these things are things you've gone through as you get ready for your budget process, et cetera, but you'll see tax revenue, specifically that large blue bar, obviously largest source of revenue. Specifically, sales tax, as we've kind of rebounded. Most entities are seeing a nice positive rebound in the sales tax revenue categories from the pandemic. So I believe your sales tax went up about $8 million, and then property tax revenue saw an increase as well. Slightly offsetting that is you will see intergovernmental revenue in that red category went down. That's primarily most entities received in 2020 CARES funding. So your 2020 intergovernmental revenue includes the CARES money that was received, which, you know, it's important to keep in mind that was a one-time revenue source. You all have received your ARPA funding, and that will get recognized starting really in 2022 as you start going through the eligible projects, et cetera. So just an offsetting decrease there. And then really most of your other categories were consistent year over year. Similar here, you'll see expenditures by function, so how they're tracked really from budget perspective and accounting. Same thing in the governmental funds. You'll see total there at the top, very consistent year over year. So each category might see slight fluctuations, obviously to mirror maybe where budgeted efforts were different, capital projects versus operating costs, et cetera. But over year, very consistent. The next item we have here is, this is the enterprise funds. So as a reminder for you all, that's going to be your water, stormwater, water pollution, and parking. So enterprise funds, the reason we present the information a little different is these are the funds where you all have the ability to set the rates. So they're similar to what would be considered in the private sector. Are the charges for services enough to sustain and cover the operating cost to provide those services? So here you'll see operating revenue across all of those funds increased. That's really just going to primarily be due to the expected and planned utility rate increases in 2021. Operating expenses increased about $11 million. Probably at least half of that is due to increased cost and supplies. So a lot of entities seeing costs due to the supply chain issues being incurred, delays that's causing, and just overall increased labor costs reflected in that. And then increased, contractual services for projects. So the next category, the reason we highlight depreciation expense there is simply, while it's a large expense in those funds, $20 million, it is what we would call a non-cash expenditure. So there in that fourth category, you'll see where we show what is the operating income in those funds, really just excluding that piece because, again, that's not a cash expenditure being incurred. And then the last category, as I said, these are considered similar to private sector as far as actually you present cash flow statements. So most businesses would take a look at what is the cash flows from operations showing, and is cash from those activities enough to cover costs, and you'll see that you do report a positive in that category, which is what you would want. So when I mentioned required communications, first thing we would note that the financial statements do reflect a clean opinion. So the AICPA term is an unmodified opinion, more commonly known as a clean, meaning the financials are presented in accordance with GAAP as required. The next bullet point is just to know we would highlight both in the financials and in this presentation if there was any significant changes or new standards that impacted how anything was accounted for in your financials. And 2021, luckily, was kind of a quiet year as far as that, so no significant changes in your financials this year. The third item, accounting estimates. This is just to highlight that as a part of the audit process and in your financials, there are areas that involve estimates or subjectivity. So we do take a look at that as part of the audit. Examples might include fair value of investments. You have actuaries that estimate what your future pension and OPEB costs are. So as a part of the audit, we do take a look at those and make sure those estimates seem reasonable, both with industry standards, but also policies that you've developed in those areas. Audit adjustments, part of the audit process would be communicating if there was any audit adjustments identified, and there were none noted. So again, that speaks to the efforts that the departments put in before we start our work, that really that final audit product is consistent with the original trial balance that we start our work with. The next category, uncorrected misstatements. So again, this will represent similar, maybe if an item comes up in the audit, but it's deemed to be immaterial to the financial statements, both by management, and we agree with that conclusion. So all audits are going to include, from our perspective, materiality. When I say there's a clean opinion, the responsibility is to make sure the financial statements are materially presented in accordance with GAAP. So obviously that has to get defined in some way, shape, or form, both from a quantitative and qualitative perspective. So uncorrected misstatements, I think the handful that came up during the audit, most of them are just simply timing. GAAP does require accruals, for example. So the items that came up were perhaps the timing of when an expenditure, obviously when you get billed invoices, that's on a lag based on when the work was performed. So that was the nature of most of those of, again, nothing off as far as how the payment was made or anything like that, just simply in which fiscal year did the expenditure recognition fall. So they're immaterial to the financials as far as compared to total expenditures, for example, so they're passed on. Disagreements and difficulties, we include that here, certainly to emphasize there were none, but just to let you know that if those items were encountered during the audit, we do have a responsibility to report that to you, and none of those issues were encountered during our audit work. Future accounting pronouncements, you do disclose in the financials. When I mentioned there were no standards that were changed this year, there are upcoming ones that the GASB has issued that could impact how things are accounted for in your financials, so you just provide information to the users on what those are. The GFOA submission, this is nice to be able to highlight. So the city has historically submitted its financials to the GFOA for the Certificate of Achievement and Excellence in Financial Reporting. That's a step that goes above and beyond. They have a pretty stringent checklist as far as additional information you have to include to be awarded that certificate. You'll see in this year's report, the 2020 financials were awarded that certificate, so that is included in your report. That highlights transparency in the information you're providing. Bond rating agencies take those things into consideration as far as those additional pieces of information being included. The last two items, excuse me. So in the compliance report, so as a reminder, the purpose of an audit is not to give an opinion on internal controls, nor do we. But standards would require that in the course of our procedures performed, if we became aware of any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, we are required to communicate those to you. There were none that came up in the course of the audit, and that relates to both the financial statement audit as well as the compliance audit. So that consideration is made for both of those audits, and no deficiencies or non-compliance of that nature came up in either of those audits performed. Any questions? I know that's a high level, but I'm happy to go through any questions on the deliverables, the audit work itself, or anything as far as the content.
Any questions from the body? Thank you very much for your report. It was very detailed.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I'm glad to see there weren't any issues or weaknesses that you found. So thank you very much for your report.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm going to deviate a little bit from what's next on the agenda. I want to make sure that I recognize a group that is in the room with us tonight. Sergeant Vidal Campos, who is one of the training instructors with the Topeka Police Department, is here with us tonight with this group of summer interns for the Topeka Police Department. Sergeant, if you want, you're certainly welcome to come on up front and quickly do an introduction and maybe where they're from.
Come on up.
Come on up. Like I said, I kind of got it off the agenda. It wasn't listed as one of the next items. I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to acknowledge your presence here today and maybe learn a little bit about this group of interns. You're welcome to introduce them, maybe from where they.
I'll let them introduce themselves. So I'll start over here with Xavier, and I'll just kind of let him go around, and he'll say his name, where he's from, and what school he goes to.
My name is Xavier Moses. I'm from Angela, Louisiana, and I go to Southern Miss.
Hello, my name is Justin Arnold. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I go to Southern Miss as well.
My name is Ashley Robinson. I'm from Olathe, and I go to Washington University.
Hi, I'm Coleman McGee. I'm from Biloxi, Mississippi, and I go to Southern Miss.
My name is Nicholas Roski. I go to Pittsburgh State University, and I'm from Coffeyville, Kansas.
My name is Calvin Stewart. I'm from Wichita, Kansas, and I go to Washington University.
My name is Courtney McGann. I'm from Lawrence, Mississippi, and I go to Southern Miss.
My name is Kayla Lane. I'm from Missouri, Mississippi, and I go to Southern Miss.
Sergeant, explain a little bit about the intern.
So just a little bit about the program, guys. It's 4 weeks long. They're here from the time, beginning of June, and they stay here till the last week of June. The interns right now, they do everything what an academy would do without police department. So everything from like emergency vehicle operation course to sitting in a classroom setting with a recruit class, because we have an academy class going on right now, and just engaging with the community. Recently they went out to the zoo. They had behind the scenes with Shana Simpson, so we appreciate her taking the time for that. We also participated with Top City Interns here in Topeka. They were gracious enough to put a really nice post at them at the pennant, and so that's just a few things that the interns get to do. So like I said, they're here for 4 weeks. I know we do, Ramada is very gracious to accommodate us in conference rooms for the last 3 times that the interns have been here, so they don't have to do that out of pocket. And then also, the chief of police has graciously given us a credit card, you know, to take the interns out to lunch and dinners. So we do appreciate that. But definitely they're here for 4 weeks, and a lot of them, you know, want to be or get into law enforcement. So that's why they're here, to kind of get an experience of what law enforcement is all about. And not only that, but get to see our community as well.
Usually I get an invite, but.
That's just where I know.
Oh, well.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Thank you.
If you just hand them up. I wanted to make sure that the audience and people watching got to see these interns, because they're the current batch of people that the police department goes out and recruits and brings to this community to hopefully get them to become police officers and residents in this community. So I want everybody to see how varied those interns are. So any suggestion that we're not reaching out is inaccurate. We're reaching out wherever we can, and I appreciate them participating in the program, and good luck to you all. And I hope that all or a majority of you will decide to serve this community in the city of Topeka. Thank you for being here tonight. Okay, we'll move on now. Get back in order. Use the general fund.
For the second presentation, we have the use of the general fund balance.
City Manager.
Mayor, Governing Body, at this time, again, I'll turn it over to Mr. Steve Wade, Finance Director, to discuss general fund reserves.
Thank you, City Manager. Mr. Mayor, earlier this year, Deputy Mayor Duncan requested a presentation on general fund reserves. And Kaylin Dwyer is here tonight from Columbia Capital to share some analysis and some data with us to address those concerns.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Good evening. Are you going to drive the presentation?
Oh, sorry.
Right.
We're like.
There we go. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening. Kalen Dwyer with Columbia Capital Management. Columbia Capital Management is the city's financial advisor. We advise on the city's bond transactions and provide investment advisory services. And like Steve said, we were asked this evening to present on the city's current general fund position, its general fund position relative to its peers, and any implications, rating implications or otherwise, for drawing down that general fund balance. So, just real quickly, we've got two primary sections in the presentation here. Basically, it's where we are today in terms of general fund basics, credit rating, that sort of stuff. And then we've got later on in the presentation kind of some spin down scenarios, take a closer look at the potential implications there. So, not to insult everybody here, I know everybody's familiar with the general fund, but just to start with the very basics here. The general fund, of course, is the primary operating fund of the city. It is the fund from which basic municipal services are provided. It's essentially the city's coffers, its nest egg, if you will. It represents the city's financial position and its cushion, its financial cushion available to defend against unexpected spending requirements or declining revenues in challenging times. For these reasons, the city's general fund policy, its position in the general fund trend, these are hot button issues for credit rating agencies. Let's take a look at the city's historical general fund balance here. So for the better part of a decade, the city has maintained a general fund balance in excess of 20%. We go back 10 years here, so you can see in 2012 it dipped below just 8%. Just for some additional context here, so that red line you see is the city's policy minimum. It's minimum required balance pursuant to its general fund policy. And that yellow line you see is pursuant to the same policy, the city's target balance. As you can see, for the better part of a decade, like I said, the city's done a great job maintaining its general fund balance at or above that policy target. All right, so what is a credit rating? Again, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this, but it's a credit score assigned by a rating agency. It's the analog would be to an individual's credit score. We all have credit scores, which can determine how much, for instance, we pay in interest if we take out a loan for whatever reason. Similar here, the city has a credit rating, which is essentially an alphanumeric score assigned by a rating agency, which is used to inform investors simply, quickly, of relative investment risk. And like I said, it affects the interest rate that the city pays as a borrower. I've got the investment grade rating scale here to the right, as you can see on this slide, and I've indicated where the city falls relative to this scale. AAA on each scale, obviously being the gold standard, and then we go down to BBB minus or Baa3, depending on the respective credit rating agency. But S&P Global, who we currently have rate the city's general obligation bonds when it issues new bonds, currently rates the city as AA, which is the third best possible credit rating on that scale. Moody's, who we no longer use for city's new issuances, but relatively speaking, they rate the city one notch lower at AA3. Okay, so the general fund and how it ties to the credit rating here. So it impacts up to 30% of the rating score. Now this is S&P's rating methodology. I said we use S&P. We get a little bit favorable of an outcome by using S&P, particularly for general fund reasons, but we can touch on that later. The general fund itself impacts three different components of the overall rating methodology. That's budgetary flexibility, budgetary performance, and liquidity. So sizable portion of the city's credit rating is impacted by the general fund. Having said that, the lion's share of the rating is impacted by other factors, economy, financial management, the city's outstanding debt, and institutional framework, which is essentially the political and legal framework operating within the state of Kansas. All right, so let's dive into these three general fund items a little more in detail here. So budgetary flexibility, this one's pretty easy. It's simply the general fund balance as a percent of the city's expenditures. And as going back to that graph that we saw earlier in the presentation, the city is currently in the mid to high 20s in that regard. S&P, anything above 15% earns you the highest score in this particular line item here in budgetary flexibility. So the city scores very strong, which is the highest possible outcome. The next item here, budgetary performance, it's the general fund operating result as a percent of expenditures. So you got the general fund balance, which is flexibility. The budgetary performance speaks specifically to whether or not the general fund is operating in the most recent fiscal year in balance, or at a deficit, or at a surplus. Currently, I think coming off the most recent fiscal year, I know that the latest financials are available as of now, but working with 2020, which is what I had available to me, the city had operating general fund surplus of about 4% and total governmental fund surplus of about 7.3%, which is very good. Second highest category here from S&P. Last item here is liquidity, which is total cash, including the general fund, but also just total cash as a percent of total expenditures. Other factors include just strong access to liquidity, financing access. If the city needs to borrow money unexpectedly for whatever reason, does it have access to do so? The answer is yes. We do it, as you guys are aware, frequently. The city borrows money and has great capital market access, borrows money at very low interest rates. So overall, these three factors plus all the other factors, the other 70% of the items that comprise the city's total credit rating, brings us to where we are today, which is a AA rating with a stable outlook from S&P. Like I said, that's the third best possible credit rating. So let's take a look at the general fund position of the city relative to some of its peers. So this is simply a list that I compiled of the 10 largest cities in the state, including the city, obviously. We've got a few outliers here towards the bottom of the list, as you can see. Overland Park, Shawnee, and Lenexa, these are all AAA rated. They've got one or more AAA ratings from various rating agencies. So those are kind of the outliers. Everybody else from Wichita to Salina, you can see the city fits kind of neatly right there in the middle at 27.1%. And I'll point out that 27.1% is the 22 budget figure, which is the most recently available estimate we have for the city. The rest of this table here is populated with audited financials, the most recently I could find. For Lenexa, that's 2021. All others, it's the 2020 audited financials. So this gives you a good idea just generally where the city stands with respect to its general fund position relative to its intrastate peers here. This next slide touches on its peers, or gives the city an idea of its general fund position relative to its peers nationally. Well, as close as we can get to its peers. This comes from a Moody's Investor Service report that was published recently, this past month. And for the category of U.S. cities with a population greater than 50,000, we can see some fund balance statistics here. I think the first row of actual dollar amounts, we included it in case folks find it informative, but it risks distorting kind of apples to apples comparisons because you've got cities of all different sizes here. I think the second row, fund balance, which kind of standardizes that against the general fund budget, as we discussed, is kind of the better metric here. So that's the real value. As you can see, the city at 27 is in between AA and A categories nationally for cities within this population range. So those peer cities, probably leaning a little closer to the single A, but right there in between the two. All right, so second part of the presentation here, spending down the general fund, scenarios and implications. So just quickly, just some disclaimers here. So since the credit crisis, the rating agencies have taken pretty serious measures to make their methodologies more transparent. So S&P, Moody's, Fitch, all of these folks have published in detail certain formulas and criteria that they take into consideration when assigning credit ratings. Having said that, we still can't ever be sure how the rating agency will view A, B, or C, because there's still plenty of room for subjectivity, and some of that is still remains proprietary, and the rating agency can, at the end of the day, do whatever they want for whatever reason they decide. So just a little background there, a little disclaimer. All right, so if the city does, in fact, decide to spend down its general fund, the rating agency, S&P, is going to focus specifically on the why here. More specifically, they'll want to know which category this action falls in. We've got two broad categories here. Is it a one-time strategic use of reserves? For instance, funding paving streets, building new buildings, what have you, infrastructure improvements, or is it more of a structural budget deterioration, such as, let's say, payroll or other ongoing operating expenditures that will require not just a one-time expense, but that the city find the revenue source for this expense on an ongoing basis each year. So whatever the reason is, it will be important to convey the appropriate message to the rating agency. I've got thumbs up and thumbs down here just to kind of generally paint the sentiment with respect to how these would probably be viewed from S&P. Obviously, one-time strategic use of reserves is going to be viewed a little more favorably than structural budget deterioration that's resulting in skinnier general fund balances. Having said that, another caveat here, the rating agency, like I said, any reaction, its reaction to a sizable and sudden general fund reduction is uncertain. We just don't know. We can try to paint by numbers with the criteria that they've published, but at the end of the day, it's hard to know. All right, so implications of lower credit rating. These are pretty obvious. It's exactly what you'd think they'd be. Higher borrowing costs. The city, as a borrower, issues bonds and notes from time to time for capital improvement projects, and its credit rating dictates how much interest it pays on the funds it borrows. How much higher is a one-notch downgrade? Let's say the city decides to draw down its general fund balance, and it gets deemed by the rating agency by one notch from AA to AA minus. So just some ballpark math here. About 20 basis points or 0.2% per year in annual debt service costs. That's $200,000 in total debt service for every 10 million borrowed. So that's not annual, that's total. For every 10 million borrowed, the city borrows typically over a 15-year period. So in real dollars, you're looking at $13,000 to $15,000 annually every year per $10 million borrowed. This next slide here is just kind of general mathematical principle that some folks find counterintuitive or it sometimes can be missed. Expenditures, of course, tend to rise over time. Growth in population, growth in services, inflation, which is a hot topic right now. Expenditures tend to climb. Because of that fact, if expenditures are increasing and the general fund balance is anchored to a percentage of those expenditures pursuant to policy, as you can imagine, that dollar amount has to also grow if you want that target to remain the same, as a percentage of expenditures, which requires operating surpluses over time to sustain existing general fund levels. And just a simple mathematical example here, and I just say that to point out that, say the city does decide to spend down to a certain level, whatever it is, and then generally speaking, say, okay, we'll maintain it at that certain level. It's important to give yourself a little bit of room in case you have an operating general fund deficit the following year, which could move the needle even further down from the new established floor as a percentage of expenditure. So just a quick mathematical example there to kind of hammer home that point. All right, last page here. Just to summarize, general fund balance and the performance of that balance, indicator of financial strength, flexibility and liquidity, credit rating implications stem from the city's general fund disposition. The current general fund balance of 27%, as estimated with the ending balance as a percent of general fund expenditures for the 2022 budget, as that compares to the city's hard policy or minimum floor target of 15% and 20%. I've identified that here. Depleting to 15% or below might result in a rating downgrade. Remember that 15% earns you the highest score for that budgetary flexibility line item in S&P's rating criteria. A lower credit rating, of course, means higher borrowing cost, and just simple mathematical principle at the end there, that maintaining general fund level, constant ambient level as a percentage of expenditures requires a structural surplus, assuming expenditures increase over time. So with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Kellen, would you mind going back to one of your early slides, the one with the 10-year spread?
Yeah. And you say 10-year spread, was it the debt service cost?
Well, it was the rate
Oh, I
and
see.
then what
Okay.
we had in the general fund balance. And thank you for this presentation. It was really good. I wanted to have everybody look at that for a moment, in that sometimes people in Topeka in general get kind of down in the mouth about the city or where it was, and that's a pretty scary looking start there in 2014 or 2012. Kellen, correct me if I'm wrong, I was on the council during that time, and if everybody remembers, in 2010 and 2011, we had a tremendous economic downturn. At the time, the city's general reserve goal was 10%, and it had been for a long, long time. And as far as I know, the city had been at or over that 10% for most if not all of that time. When the economy tanked in 2010 and 2011, the council at budget time said, what are we going to do? You know, are we going to raise taxes at a time like this, or make a commitment to economize as much as we could on the budget that we have and take a risk that we would dip into our reserves in order to cover? And that's what happened that got it down to the 7.9%. Just so you know, it was not like it had always been really low and way under 15% or anything. That was a very intentional decision by the council at that time to protect the citizens. And shortly after that was when that kind of was scary. Our bond rating did not go down, by the way, when that happened, but whatever the date is on when we raised that, the reserve level happened about that time. I just wanted people to know we hadn't been that careless all those years.
Yeah, that's correct. Thanks, Ms. Hiller. And just at that time, the city's bonds were rated by Moody's. I think it was 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Moody's downgraded the city from AA2 to AA3, which put their general geo credit rating on the same footing as its utility revenue, which didn't set right with us. We didn't agree with that for a variety of reasons. The reason for that downgrade was general fund pressures, which would then very quickly in short order be rectified, but in the meantime, we switched to S&P, as you guys know.
Just wanted to share that. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Kellen.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Further questions from the body? Deputy Mayor.
Well, I just want to say thank you for this presentation. Obviously, as Steve said, I'm one who's been asking about it the last several years. If you look at the red line, obviously that's I guess the family friendly, that's our O poop line. That's the line we definitely never at 15% want to start risking getting too close to. And 20% seems clearly, if we hover at that gives us that breathing room in case something does happen to fluctuate. My frustration, as I've expressed several times in the last couple budget cycles, is we're over that 20%. And so I sit there looking at it saying, right now we're 7% over, and I understand all the reasons we want to hold on to some money. I will totally steal his line to some degree because it illustrates my frustration. That's Councilmember Dober, as he has said. It's the taxpayers' money, and we want to make sure it's being put to use when we can. And a lot of that could probably be put towards some future debt projects that we talk about paying things for cash. And so I am not ever advocating we go below that 20% or start getting into that dangerous territory, but I just do want us to look at that. This is not apples to apples, but a percent is almost $1 million, give or take. So, 7% is $7 million above the $20 million. So I appreciate the presentation. Gives us an opportunity to have that discussion about if there's some positive uses that keep our bond rating solid, but our dollars out there for good use for us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Further comments or questions? Thank you very much for your presentation, sir.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Christina, is Karen here?
Yes.
Okay, couldn't
She's
see
just
her.
short.
Yeah. Madam Clerk, would you read for the last presentation?
For the third presentation, we have a Changing Our Culture Property Maintenance Progress Report.
City Manager?
At this time, Mayor, governing body, I will turn it over to Councilwomen Valdivia Acla and Councilwoman Hiller to introduce our guests and their presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate this opportunity. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and I have been co-leading the initiative that was supported back around December called by a 10-0 vote of this council called Change Our Culture of Property Maintenance. And Karen Black, who is with us for a 4-day stint this week, is the consultant on 2 of the 3 policy pieces of that initiative, the policy piece on the policies and procedures regarding code compliance, as well as sitting with us through exploring possibilities with the developer roundtable. We have a third, just to refresh, we have a third piece on that policy side, which is updating our vegetation in our code, which has been addressed by our legal staff. And we also have two action steps on the action side of that initiative, which is to get a mowing program going and to get a volunteer program going to focus on optimizing how much mowing people are doing for themselves or for each other this summer. So Karen's work and her report here are in the context of that. Just so everyone knows, in this 4-day stint, she's had 13 engagements scheduled, mostly with roundtable groups and so on. She did present to the Public Health and Safety Committee this morning a full update on where she is. The PowerPoint for that has been attached to this agenda. Council here got handouts of it today, but for council members who are virtual or the public who wants to see that entire presentation, it is online with the agenda for this line item at this point. Also, we will be having a meet and greet for the public tomorrow evening from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Celtic Fox for anyone from the public to come in and visit with her further, in particular to share facts that they think she might not have yet about code compliance policy and procedures, which includes the court procedures and so on. So that is free to the public, and anyone's welcome to come. Also, if they want to share, again, not only the facts, but ask any questions or make sure she's heard the strategy that they'd had in mind that could help us move our agenda along. We really appreciate having her here. It's been a full day and a half already, but with great response. To introduce her more specifically, Ms. Black is an attorney. She is currently the principal at May 8 Consulting and is a Senior Research Fellow at the Lindy Institute for Urban Innovation at Drexel University in Philadelphia. She has over 30 years of progressive experience in the civil rights and housing policy fields. When Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, for whom we give credit for finding Ms. Black, was researching prospective consultants for us, her name came up consistently as a premier consultant in this field in the country. So we are excited to have her here. We wanted to bring her forward for a few minutes in presentation to introduce her to everyone and to the public, and she's got a few words to share with us about how things are going.
Thank you. It's my honor and pleasure to be here tonight, and I really just want to come and say hello and show my face and let you know that we're in the middle of this project. Some of you I met with today. We met with the city attorney and the lawyers talk legal. We've met with the mayor. But what you're doing here is really groundbreaking, and I just want to say that as someone who works in a lot of cities. I am often asked to fix things, right? And typically what they want me to fix is, could you make it go a little faster? Could you make it go a little smoother? Could you add a little more equitable treatment? And you feel all the time like you're working around the edges. This working team and Councilwoman Hiller and Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and have been very clear that we're trying to change the very culture of property maintenance. And to do that, that means a robust collaboration between departments. So I've met with fire, code, law, housing, community engagement, and other departments. But it also means a collaboration with the business community, nonprofit housing providers, and the public. And so prior to coming, I did my homework. I interviewed about 30 city leaders. I analyzed all the data you could give me. And some of it was rough, and some of it was great. And some things we can understand really much more fully now, to have an idea of where inspections are taking place, what kinds of inspections, what the outcome is, how long that process is taking, and you'll see some of that in the PowerPoint. And then this visit was planned for a deep dive because, I think as the mayor said today, the goal is not to give you a few ideas, a little inspiration, but it's actually to look at what the current system is and what are the specific pieces that could be implemented, whether that requires a new ordinance or whether that just requires a change in policy that would make code enforcement more efficient, more effective, and more equitable. And just in this last day and a half, we've had these amazing kind of brainstorming meetings, and I can tell you the consensus is that it's really important to get this right. And I knew that coming in, right? I teach at the University of Pennsylvania, and a new study came out 2 months ago, basically showing that if you repair one home on a block, one home, crime goes down 20%, most specifically gun violence. When you invest in a neighborhood, it changes the dynamic. And investment is contagious. It also not only improves the health of the people living in the home, that you just improve the property conditions, but those who have to walk by it and live near it, right? Because we went on a tour yesterday, and just as you're going past, you know that house that is just run down and deteriorated, and it feels less safe, and the weeds are high. Going by that, believe it or not, they've proven your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure is affected, right? We want to live in communities that we are comfortable in. And property condition has that ability to change that dynamic and make them safer and healthier, which is the goal here. So moving forward, I still have a day and a half to go. and my working team has me moving from place to place. I am very lucky that they actually guide me there, because I just, each meeting, we're trying to figure out what will have the highest impact, and then we want to make sure that any change we're contemplating is, first of all, legally feasible, that it's politically feasible, that the finances are there to make it happen, and that we can watch the impact happening, right, with some really good metrics. So we make sure that we aren't just doing something because we've always done it that way, but in fact, we're getting results. So if you have any time over the next few days, I bet you I have 15 minutes here or there. I don't know. They've scheduled me for almost every minute. And we're meeting with the public tomorrow night. And tomorrow, I think the morning is code. And then we're meeting with the Landlords Association and the Apartment Council, and just getting great information, great feedback, and learning a lot. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Karen. And also, council members, we've got a debrief set on Thursday morning that you are welcome to join, 8 to 9 at Annie's. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. She's not done a short PowerPoint. Okay.
No, you wanted it short.
Okay. Okay. If the clerk would read agenda number 5, our consent agenda.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller granting Miguel Lara an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seek concerning noise prohibitions. B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Sylvia Ortiz granting Randy Wheat an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seek concerning noise prohibitions. C is an ordinance introduced by Councilmember Christina Valdivia Acala concerning bicycles, scooters, roller skates, and skateboards in the Noto Arts and Entertainment District, amending City of Topeka Code Section 1035-030 and repealing original section. D are minutes of the regular meeting of June 7, 2022, and there are no applications.
Thank you. We've heard the consent agenda read. Is there a motion from the body?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Valdivia Acala, second by Councilwoman Nager. If you'll call the roll vote, please.
Councilmembers Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Motion has been carried. We'll move to action items number 6 on the agenda, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by interim city manager William E. Cochran, amending resolution of advisability and authorization number 9279, which provides street improvements for Sherwood Park subdivision number 9, as more specifically described herein.
City manager.
Mayor, governing body, this is an action item. We had the discussion several weeks ago or last week, and this does require 6 votes for approval.
Okay. Do I have a motion from the body? Motion to approve by Councilman Dobler. A second by Councilwoman Ortiz. If you call the roll vote, please.
Councilmembers Ortiz,
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
and Valdivia Acala.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Motion is carried. Action item 6B, if the clerk would read.
B is approval of an amendment to the City of Topeka 2021 Annual Consolidated Action Plan.
City manager.
Mayor, governing body, we've had discussion on this previously. This is an action item for tonight, and again, it takes 6 votes by the governing body.
Having heard the action item, is there a motion from the council? Okay. Motion to approve by Councilman Dobler,
Second.
second by Councilwoman Valdivia Akala. Would you call the roll vote, please?
Councilmembers Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yeah.
Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Motion carried. Action item 6C, if the clerk would read.
C is a resolution of the governing body of the city of Topeka, Kansas, as issue of certain healthcare facilities refunding and improvement revenue bonds, Midland Care Connection and Inc. projects, Series 2020, authorizing and consenting to the sale and transfer of certain property by Midland Care Connection Incorporated.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, governing body, this is Midland Hospice Care has requested that there be an adjustment. This is an action item. Takes 6 votes for approval. We do have Mr. Kevin Cowan present if anybody has any questions, reference this.
Okay. The resolution has been read. Are there any questions before I ask for a motion by the body?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Ortiz, second by Councilwoman Nager. If you call the roll vote, please.
Okay, Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yeah.
Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
and Kell.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Motion's been carried. Move to action item 6D, if the clerk would read.
D is approval of City of Topeka ARPA funds grant application and guidelines for use in social service requests for ARPA dollars as recommended by the Policy and Finance Committee.
City Manager.
Mayor, governing body, this is being brought forward by Policy and Finance Committee. At this point, I will turn it over to Deputy Mayor Duncan for any additional input.
All of the things we discussed a week ago have been integrated into this application. And so I guess, I won't say this is your last chance to toss out suggestions or recommendations, but here's one opportunity to make any, if you have any. Otherwise, we are satisfied with this application and ready to move forward, Mayor.
Okay. Anyone else from the committee wish to speak to it? Motion from the body? You have a question? Councilwoman Valdivia Akala?
Actually, it was going to be, anyway, I'll just say thank you to Councilman Duncan, Assistant Deputy Mayor Duncan, for all the work and the guidance that he's given. This is my first time on the Policy and Finance. So I appreciate the work that we have done together to formulate this along with staff. And I look forward to how we're going to move forward in an intentional way for the citizens of Topeka. So thank you.
Would you like to make a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Valdivia Akala.
And I'll second.
Second by Councilwoman Nager. Sorry. Did you have a comment?
No, I was going to second.
Okay. If you call the roll vote, please.
Councilmembers Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Ortiz.
I do have a question before we vote,
Okay,
if I may.
please.
I was reading in there where the online applications, I think Christina had mentioned to put a pause button in there, or where they could save it. Were they able to do that?
Yes. The answer is yes, Councilmember Ortiz.
Kalia answered yes.
Yes.
Kalia, how did Kalia get involved here? Okay. I agree, I think that is important when you're filling those applications out. To be surprised how many come in incomplete because they don't know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. Sorry, any further questions? Okay, we'll start the vote again, please.
Councilmembers Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila.
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
Kale.
Yes.
And Nager.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Just two comments. With this approval this evening, they want me to say it'll be ready by 9 a.m. tomorrow, which it will be. I told them they should give themselves 24 hours just to make sure, but that's okay. They are very confident and ready to go. So just so the public knows, even though our timeline said the goal was to have this up by like the 27th, it will be up tomorrow morning by 9 a.m. and people can go online and start looking for it. And then as of right now, I don't believe this will change, but information will come out. There will be a webinar on June 23rd at 6 p.m. for anyone to participate in, and then that webinar will also be posted online after the fact for people to watch. So now that we've approved it, the process has begun.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
I would like staff to send me a copy of that because I know people will start emailing me so I can email them directly. I appreciate it, thank you. And thanks to the staff for doing that, giving Hannah banana. Thank you.
I too would like to express my thanks to Deputy Mayor for all the work that they put into this. This was something that we really wanted to do right, try to make it simpler for those applicants, and look forward to the opportunity to disperse these funds using the forms that have been created that I think will help us serve the community. And thank you again, Deputy Mayor, and everyone else working with you on that committee. Move on to public comment. I don't have anyone signed up. Did anyone at the last minute?
One person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Benny Cochran? Mr. Cochran, if you approach the podium. And sir, you have 4 minutes. Those lights will go on. Green light, you can start. Yellow is kind of a warning. You get a minute left.
All right.
And the red light is your time's up. Thank you.
So going with the mowing thing that we talked about, I'm in District 6 with Hannah. I got an invoice here saying you're required to correct this violation for weeds for the growth of it, and this was after like 4 or 5 days of just constant rain here in Topeka at the end of May last month. It says the property owner may appeal this notice of violation by requesting a hearing. I went to the property maintenance division and requested my hearing. They scheduled it for June 8th, and they were like, you can correct this action by May 29th, which I mowed it like the exact same day. They came out and checked this. So the issue is, I went to my hearing, and they're like, well, we're not going to hear you. We're not going to talk to you because you corrected it. But nowhere on here it says, if you're guilty or not guilty or whatever we're going to talk to you, it says you may appeal this notice violation. The thing is with this is, if it happens again, for whatever reason, if I'm depressed and I go outside, I don't do my thing, we get more rain, for a long, long time and it grows. If this happens, it's just an automatic $75 fine. This is from the 2012 code that y'all passed with the grass mowing. I don't know if it's exactly on here. 8.60.140, section 302. So my thing is, I requested a hearing about this to try to get me back, to the ground zero of feeling, hey, this is the facts behind it. This is why, it's grown up. We're in the middle of like spring last summer and we had a lot of rain. And I just couldn't get a hearing. I'm going to go to the thing tomorrow, Celtic Fox, and I'm going to talk with her and present some of the stuff and let her know. And then the very last thing, which is not tied to this, is I bought this house a few years ago, and I'm on a corner where there's a drain. The gravel and not the gravel, but the road is cracked, broken up like about 1 inch. So everything gets caught on this whole curb. It doesn't drain. It just stays and it just stinks and gets caught up. I put in a C-click fix. We'll get to it by like 2026 or something. I just can't get it fixed. When it starts getting hot and if it's been out, it stinks. It's just nasty. I used to go out, pressure wash it, shovel it and all that. But that's like on y'all. Like I'm kind of done with doing that. So it's pretty much what I got for today.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. No one else has signed up for public comment. And we'll move to number 8, announcements. City Clerk.
For the June 21st agenda, we have 1 proclamation, and we have 4 appointments. We'll have 3 presentations: Utilities Quarterly Report, Public Works Quarterly Report, and then we have the 2023 budget preparation. On the consent agenda, we have 1 workers' comp claim. Action items include an ordinance for downtown D3 rezoning, and then a resolution canceling the August 2nd and November 8th governing body meetings due to the elections. And then the non-action items are a discussion on the resolution of intent for issuance of industrial revenue bonds for Flywheel Fairwell LLC.
Thank you. City Manager.
Just a couple things. We had a couple baby births in finance. Adam Vaughn and his wife welcomed a baby boy, and Kathleen Burrows and her husband a baby girl. So congratulations to them. And then June 20th, city offices are closed in observance of Juneteenth holiday.
Thank you. Councilman Kell.
This Sunday is Father's Day, and just a reminder to all that still have their fathers around. I lost mine unexpectedly a couple years ago. Take some time, spend some time with your father. Get to, especially if you're an adult, get to know them as an adult. And there's a lot of things as a child you don't know about your parents that later on in life you learn, or you learn why they did certain things a certain way while you're growing up, and just say thank you and spend some time with them, and appreciate the time you do have with them.
Thank you. Councilwoman Mayer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to just say there are a couple things happening in the city of Topeka that people should know about. First and foremost, that the city of Topeka is donating 1,200 desktop computers to qualifying residents. In order to qualify, residents must receive SNAP, Medicaid, SSI, federal public housing assistance, veteran pension benefit program, or have a household income that is less than 200% of federal poverty guidelines on an annual basis. That's a huge mouthful. You can actually go ahead and just, like me, Google Topeka free computers for citizens. If you want to know more information and you do not have a computer, you can go ahead and call 785-368-3098 to pre-qualify for a free desktop computer. Again, that number is 785-368-3098. I didn't get it in time to go ahead and do my trademark sign. Another thing, that if you are interested in taking over an abandoned lot and turning it into a community garden, you can actually go to the City of Topeka website, topeka.org/planning/community-gardens, and you can figure out from there how you can apply. There's a $50 application fee, but if you go in as a group, once you have that $50 application fee secured and applied, you have free reign to an abandoned lot to make it a better spot in your community and help yield some food for those around you. I also want to go ahead and just wish everyone a happy Pride and a happy Juneteenth. Our LGBTQ community and our Black community, as well as our other communities of color, are areas of our community that we need to make sure that we are taking time to lift up, not just during times of celebration, but at all times. I do encourage people to take this time to remember how far we have come and to also focus on how far we have yet to go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Dover.
I can't think of a single thing that I have to say that anybody wants to hear, so I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I always go before you, so I worry I'm taking this from you, but I know you believe it's the importance of at least the recognition, not the credit for it. So today is an end of watch for 2 officers, Charles Joseph Bolander and Jeff William Howie, who in 2000 sacrificed in a helicopter accident here in Topeka. So as always, I just want to make sure that that goes recognized today for their service to the city of Topeka. Second thing is, it's hot out there. We're back into the heat. So as I say, when it's cold, check on your neighbors, make sure that they've got what they need and are doing okay. If you've got some neighbors or friends or family who can't kind of get out and about or lose their air conditioning and make sure they're getting taken care of. And the last thing is, as a proud Topeka West graduate, I believe yesterday or in the last 24, 48 hours, Mr. Basketball of the Year, Elijah Brooks, who is now a proud Topeka West alumni and the highest scorer in that school's history, committed to the University of North Dakota, which is a Division I school. I hope he plays so well that my other alma mater, the University of Kansas, regrets that they didn't jump on him and get him to go there, or even K-State to stay in state, even Wichita State. It would be nice to see him to stay in Kansas, but I'm glad that he found a Division I home and look forward to seeing what he accomplishes out there. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on Karen Black's presentation with some thank yous. Her contract was funded by the city and partnered in a strong way by the Greater Topeka Partnership as well. We really appreciate that partnership, and we had 4 people this morning for the presentation from the partnership as well. That's a good step for us in many, many ways, and much appreciated. We also have had city staff just been phenomenal. We've talked about the different departments, and it's really building that, changing our culture internally of having these brave conversations about what's working and what's not, and how departments and individuals can work together as well. We also have a tremendously supportive team that's been leading. Hannah Ulrig has taken the lead in coordinating all the activities for us with internal as well as external contacts. Liz Toyne from the council staff has been really helpful in scheduling things as well, and particularly Monique Laudet and Gretchen Spiker have been actively involved in getting all the pieces together as well. So again, just wanted to add those thank yous. The citizens that have come and that will come yet have been invaluable. We went out of our way to specifically re-invite the 90 people that participated last September to come back, and others whose names had arisen, and people have been really responsive and really helpful. So we look forward to these next steps. Our mowing contract deadline is out, so watch for news about the mowing initiative for this year by the end of the month. Same with the volunteer initiative, which we've been holding work on until the mowing was ready as well. But lots going on, and thanks to the rest of the committee as well. Councilman Spencer, Duncan, and Dobler. So, thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Valdivia-Acala.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to say happy early Juneteenth to all our African-American relatives all over the city, every city, the state, and the nation. That celebration of such endurance, of freedom, that you all may be blessed with continued movement towards full equity and the continued aspiration that I think so many of us have as we continue to look at the Black excellence that is brought forward by all. And wanted to say happy Father's Day, early Father's Day to all dads, and how important your presence is into the lives of sons and daughters. And also, just wanted to speak a little bit about Karen Black being here. I have this little paragraph, right, but I just want to say it has been absolutely fascinating, and so intriguing and daunting and illuminating to go to the level that we're at, where we explore the depths of what makes the city work, and at times, perhaps not work as best as we would like. Sitting in on these meetings with a woman who has such expertise, you just kind of feel humbled to even be sitting in the seat as a council person. And so we really look forward to the next day and a half with her. But also I want to say that I don't have the words to say how deeply I feel about the possibilities we see coming to life through the dialogue that we're having with re-envisioning beyond the bubbles that we can all get stuck in. And I include myself in that. in dialogue with the city staff, neighborhoods, nonprofits, as we learn to lean in towards each other. It should give us all great hope that we can move our city to a new level. Safe housing, secure housing, neighborhoods reaching out, neighbor helping neighbor, and a city staff that can take hope and encouragement and great pride if we can get this going and get this off the ground and sustain it in being an integral force in the cultural shift that is so needed and possible at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz. Hi. Passing? Okay. I just want to invite everybody who has the opportunity this coming Saturday to join myself and Deputy Mayor at the Juneteenth celebration at Highcrest Park. If you've not been there before, it's a fun time. It's a good place to say hi to people you know and meet new friends, enjoy some excellent food. That's always the draw for me. But for those of you who have some time, stop by, visit with a few folks. I think you'll enjoy it. The Deputy Mayor and I will be reading the proclamation and visiting with a lot of friends there. The Deputy Mayor made some reference to, the heat this time of year, and we always have this caution to worry about children and pets and cars. Just make sure that you do everything you can to make sure that you keep them safe. And if you see someone who's not doing what they should do, call the police immediately or take whatever action is necessary to help anybody who's in distress. Keep that in mind. And my father has passed. I have fond memories of him. I want to wish my son an early happy birthday because I won't say how many years ago, but he was born on Father's Day. So that was my gift, first gift on Father's Day was my son Brian. So I wish him an early happy birthday. I thank you all for your participation. There is a need for one executive session. If the city attorney will state the motion, please.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 15 minutes to discuss matters related to an individual employee pursuant to KSA 754319B1. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers. The following staff may be needed to assist the governing body in its deliberations: interim city manager Cochran and other staff he deems necessary.
Having heard the motion read, do I have a motion to approve from Councilman Dobler, second from Councilman Kell? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. We will recess into executive session immediately. And thank you very much for your attendance. Here we go. Okay, we have reconvened. Councilwoman, we have reconvened into open session. No action has been taken. If there's nothing further to bring before this body, the executive session is closed, and I close this meeting. We're adjourned.
Okay.
Okay.